Hi, everybody. This is Dick, Sharon, and Linnea again to talk about a really interesting play we saw last night. It's called, of all things, Fetch Clay, Make Man. It's written by Will Power, directed by Debbie Allen, has 5 actors, including Ray Fisher, who stars as Ali, Edwin Lee Gibson as Stepin Fetchit, Wilkie Ferguson and Brother Rashid, Alexis Floyd as Sonia Clay, Ali's wife, Bruce Nozick, William Fox, and Freddie L. Fleming, who actually played Muhammad Ali last night as the understudy. It plays at Kirk Douglas Theater in Culver City, just plays to Sunday. So you better hop on it if you want to see it.
So the play is about the unlikely friendship between Muhammad Ali and Stepin Fetchit. And for those of you who, I think there's nobody in the world living today who doesn't know who Muhammad Ali is, but I think that there could be quite a few people who don't know who Stepin Fetchit was. And Stepin Fetchit originally began his career as a vaudeville actor. He was born in 1904, I believe it is. And he had quite a significant career in Hollywood and film. As I said in earlier, before film and vaudeville, and he was sort of a Black celebrity when there really weren't very many Black celebrities. But the roles that he played, much like what were pretty much the only roles that were offered to him, roles that made him appear like a buffoon. Some called him a coon, some called him a sellout, because he played these roles that made the Black community look like we were a bunch of idiots. And a lot of people in the Black community resented that he took on those roles. But there were those who understood that, he needed to make a living, and so that's what he did. So anyway, it's about this unlikely relationship between Muhammad Ali, who was just coming up. It takes place probably during a week before Muhammad Ali's second fight with Sonny Liston. And at the time, Muhammad Ali was the heavyweight champion, boxing champion of the world, and he was fighting Sonny Liston the second time to defend his title. He had taken the title from Sonny Liston about a year before. And so the whole play takes place as Muhammad Ali is preparing for this fight.
Right. So one interesting thing to me was, ordinarily you see a play like this, and the star and the second banana get all the attention, and then the other people kind of move around them and offer appropriate commentary at times. But in this play, it seemed that all 5 people, even the ones you thought would be more periphery, they all had an interesting story that intertwined. For example, the one who plays William Fox, he's the head of Fox Movies, and he's the first guy that hires Stepin Fetchit. I mean, he tells this interesting story about his family coming from Hungary, probably Hungarian Jewish, coming to New York, living in poverty, him having to carry pails of water up 5 flights of stairs because the building didn't have water, and then him making himself respectable, adopting the way of talking, the language, the cigars. In a way, he made himself respectable and white. So it was an interesting story, and Muhammad Ali's wife, initially she comes out in Muslim garb, the whole regalia, and you think, well, she's just kind of there because he had a wife and you need her on the stage. But as the play develops, she goes back and rebels and becomes, I mean, she was a party girl who met Ali at a dance club and had been making her living on her back since a young girl, and she had a powerful emotional story that added to it. So to me, that was both a strength and a weakness, because it was like everybody on stage has something to say. And on the other hand, it was like, what story are we listening to here? You go into it because Muhammad Ali is so famous. You think, well, it's all about Muhammad Ali and Sonny Liston and why did he have this weird guy from the 30s in his training camp? You leave it and you think, this is Stepin Fetchit's story. He has a more powerful, how he made his way in the world when racism was on steroids.
So I think that at its core, this play is really a play about identity, respectability politics and identity, both your own self, how you self-identify, and the identities that are imposed upon you. And then the things that you do to gain respect, to elevate your status in life. So for example, Fox, the guy who was in charge of Fox Studios, I guess what ultimately became Fox Studios, he kept saying that he made himself white. Well, clearly his race was his race from the time that he was born. He didn't make himself white. But what he was conveying was the notion that in order to gain respect, you had to be white and you had to take on certain characteristics,
right,
that being white coupled with these other characteristics would provide you entree to a different world, entree to a world that is closed to people that are non-white. However, there is some status movement, status mobility in the non-white world, and we see that with Muhammad Ali's wife, who came from beginnings where she was an orphan child and didn't have parents to take care of her. And there was some suggestion that maybe she may have been a prostitute, but then shed that whole image and hid it. But then took on, wore the Muslim,
hijab,
the Muslim garb, but then wanted to go back to wearing her regular clothes because she wanted to take her own identity back, not necessarily being a prostitute, but not having someone define for her what was respectable. And that's what Muhammad Ali was attempting to do, and their marriage didn't last.
Do you have thoughts, Nia? No, not right now. A little bit later. Okay, so that establishing identity. Well, that's why, to me, the play is really kind of more about Stepin Fetchit, because here he was, a learned, articulate, well-spoken, dramatic actor in his youth, who, to make it in Hollywood, made himself into this buffoon, and developed this whole way of talking and walking, and resenting it because he couldn't escape it. He couldn't, what he really wanted to do, and the play is about, he really wanted to shed the Stepin Fetchit and become his own natural self and become a recognized actor, even though Stepin Fetchit made him a household name, maybe not a
millionaire,
and a millionaire, one of the
most Black millionaires in this country.
But he was also reviled in the Black community for being a sellout and a tom. So he had a real tension there. I will say, I thought the acting, I mean, the understudy, Freddie L. Fleming, was a very believable heavyweight boxer. I mean, he was actually bigger than most boxers. And I mean, you could see, and I read a little bit about him, and he was a professional athlete, professional basketball player, but he hurt himself.
Yeah. So I was reflecting on my own life while watching this play. I was looking at the character that was playing the role of Stepin Fetchit and Muhammad Ali, and thinking about the lack of Black icons in the Black community and why these people became so important to us. I mean, Muhammad Ali was obviously, he was loved by the whole world, but he was deeply loved by the Black community. And I think that, he was talented, he was beautiful, he had charisma, and he was a world champion in a very brutal sport, if we're being honest. But the thing is, there was a lack of focus, and there was a lack of heroes. There were a lack of, when you look back in particularly post-Civil War, and you look in the South and really the rest of the country, all of the monuments that were erected in this country, the vast majority of those monuments are from Civil War people who were attempting to secede from the nation. They were traitors to the nation. And just imagine what that feels like when here are the people, many of which committed crimes against humanity by enslaving people, and yet we erect monuments to them, even in places like Central Park, New York City. So having this lack of I did not see a statue erected to a Black person until I'm going to say until I was about 55 years old. That was the first time in my life that I saw a statue erected to a Black person. So it sends a very powerful message that you are nothing, you mean nothing, you've contributed nothing, when in fact, we really built this country in a significant way. So this play made me look at the iconography and the metamorphosis of that, the evolution of the iconography, how it was that Stepin Fetchit was sort of the only one at a point. We did have Jack Johnson, and I have some notes here about Jack Johnson, who was a professional boxer who Muhammad Ali wanted to find out about his secret punch. And so the premise of this relationship between Muhammad Ali and Stepin Fetchit is that Stepin Fetchit had a personal relationship with Jack Johnson, and Muhammad Ali was trying to glean information out of Stepin Fetchit about Jack Johnson's special punch. And then I later learned that that punch was the thing that took out Sonny Liston.
Yes. So to me, that was kind of a weak thread. You'd think, well, the playwright was really clever to think up this imaginary thing of Muhammad Ali and who's the most unlikely person he would be friends with. Why, Stepin Fetchit, this guy who was reviled in certainly the Black community of the 60s. Well, the truth was, it was a true story. And there were real. And the playwright was encouraged to do this play because he'd seen pictures of the two of them together. And yes, the play says Muhammad Ali brought him there to teach him because Stepin Fetchit would remember Jack Johnson's anchor punch, a special overhand. Well, that's a pretty weak read. I mean, Muhammad Ali was in the gym all the time. He knew every way in the world to hit another man. There was and
I can't imagine that Stepin Fetchit would know how this punch worked. I mean, he was a comedian. How would he know?
Right. So there was, I mean, I love the production, and we got these special seats up on the side because we got the ticket so late, which really was a wonderful way to watch the movie. And the acting was wonderful, especially, I mean, it was, I mean, Stepin Fetchit looked like Stepin Fetchit. I mean, the acting was letter perfect, and
he looked just the actor physically looked like Stepin Fetchit, and the actor who played Muhammad Ali looked a lot like Muhammad Ali.
He looked like a bigger, stronger Muhammad Ali. He did, yes, and he bounced around on the stage. And either he'd done some boxing in his life or they'd trained him forever. He looked like a boxer. It was wonderfully done. I don't know that I rate it the best play because kind of what message did you come away with? Just the search for identity and establishing. Yeah, maybe that was it.
Yeah, well, for me, sitting there with Nia, I'm thinking, okay, so here's Nia, a young Black woman who had never heard of Stepin Fetchit, knew who Muhammad Ali was, but it's unlikely that, you had this kind of insight into him and him being married to a Muslim woman. So I think it's educational. And I think that there's a lot of information about our history that gets lost. And it's incumbent upon our generation to try to do whatever we can to pass it on to the next. So
any thoughts, Nia? We're putting you on.
Put me on blast. No, it was a really good play. Like Sharon said, it was in many ways sort of a history lesson for me. As she mentioned, I had no clue who Stepin Fetchit was. I was aware of Muhammad Ali, as I think everyone is. Um, the threads that my dad was talking about was also really interesting. It made the play much more inclusive. There weren't just exposition lines just to provide information to move the plot along. It was all very natural. Everything wove together in a very interesting way. I did really enjoy, I actually did enjoy that seemingly very light thread of why Stepin Fetchit, or why Muhammad Ali brought in Stepin Fetchit, because it culminated towards the end of the play and it turned into this entire thing of, according to Stepin Fetchit, was it Jack Johnson who was the boxer? Is that what his name was? How he called upon the rage of the slaves who were taken and threw themselves over the boat, who, because they'd rather be dead than be in chains, and used that rage of all the hundreds, thousands of those who had died as slaves, and that's what he called upon. So it wasn't just an overhand punch, it was an overhand punch filled with ancestral rage, which is what made it so powerful. And that was sort of the culmination, and that sort of tied up all of these threads between talking about Stepin Fetchit and what he had to sort of put himself through in order to work not just his way into Hollywood. And yes, he became a millionaire and made lots and lots of money, but he opened the door for every other Black person to be in the limelight. And I think one of my favorite lines in the play was, he was getting a little hot with Muhammad Ali, and he yells at him, you know, I snuck in the back door so that you could walk into the front. And that was really, really powerful. It really hit me and sort of put that sort of choice into perspective. Fantastic play. If you have time this weekend, definitely go see it. It was really well done.
I think that's a great way to close this. I think you're right, Nia. That was one of the most powerful lines. And yeah, I would recommend this play.
Yeah,
Highly.
that's it too. So it's kind of about the contortions Black people have to do to succeed in a white world, which is what Stepin Fetchit's stories was about. And also to some extent Muhammad Ali's.
Oh, yeah.
So good. So so we're seeing another play tomorrow night, another one Sunday. Boy, we're just theater going aficionados.
Yeah, it would be nice if some of these tickets were free.
They are this weekend, all this weekend. Okay, very good. Bye, folks. See you soon.